When Daniel Harris came back earlier than planned, he didn't expect the silence that waited for him. His mother, Margaret, sat trembling on the couch, her scarf tilted just enough to reveal fading bruises. She kept whispering the same broken line, "Am I a witch? Am I a bad mother?" The sight locked him in place. But when Daniel later checked the mansion's security feeds, the truth he uncovered cut far deeper than he was ready for. The one responsible wasn't a stranger. It was his own wife, Jennifer. What started as betrayal inside a family was about to unravel into something far darker, a chain of buried secrets and missing lives that detectives had been chasing for years. Before we continue, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. Your support means everything, and it helps us bring you even more gripping stories like this one. Now the story begins. The jet touched down in a soft drizzle, the kind that clings to suits and lingers in the air. Daniel stepped out of the car, loosened his tie, and let the cool night air wash away the stale conference room still clinging to his skin. The mansion lights were glowing, but the house felt paused in time. No music from the kitchen, no dishes clinking together, only the hum of the air conditioning and the faint ticking of the old grandfather clock in the hallway. Daniel set his phone face down on the console table, fiddled with a cufflink that didn't need fixing, and just listened. That's when he heard it, a sound slipping through the stillness. Breath held back, breaking free in small bursts. Past the foyer, the living room sat like a museum, polished wood shining, framed awards lined neatly, and fresh lilies waiting in a vase. On the edge of the couch sat his mother, Margaret. Her hands were locked too tight, her shoulders folded inward. The scarf had shifted, revealing a bruise beneath it. The mark wasn't loud, but it didn't hide either, dark purple fading into green, the way a storm lingers long after it's gone. Daniel's chest burned, then hollowed out. He stepped forward, carefully, slowly, reading the room before reaching for her. From the pantry doorway, two staff whispered, thinking they were unseen. "Thought Madam was doing better. You know who's been with her while he's away?" Their words tangled with the sweetness of lilies in the air, mixed wrong with the sharp bite of ointment. Margaret blinked up at him. Once, twice, 3 times, as though she had to reload his face into memory. Her lips trembled, then steadied, and she spoke, not like a statement, but like a plea carved into her mind, "Am I a witch? Am I a bad mother?" The clock ticked. A pipe upstairs cooled with a click. Daniel crouched, letting his hand hover just above her wrist before resting it there gently, like placing glass on a bedside table. Her pulse raced. His jaw tightened. He swallowed all the things he wanted to shout and forced himself to breathe. He sat down beside her, not quite touching, and straightened the messy knot of her scarf. Small movements, tidy the knot, smooth the crease, hide the storm. His eyes flicked up to the ceiling corner, where a tiny red light blinked from the camera, always watching. In the hallway, a floorboard creaked, then fell silent as the staff pulled back. The house seemed to hold its breath, bracing itself for whatever would come next. Daniel inhaled slow through his nose. The room carried the heavy mix of lilies and fear. He didn't argue. He didn't rush. Instead, he studied, the bruises, the way she tilted her chin, how her eyes kept darting to the doorway like she expected it to bite back. Patterns lived in those little gestures. And patterns, he knew, told stories. He rose, adjusted his sleeve, and spoke in a low voice, steady but weighted. No accusations yet. No questions. Just gravity. His eyes caught the blinking red light once more, then shifted toward the hall leading to his office. The server room. The footage. The ledger of truth. No drama, no sudden outburst. Just direction. He kissed the top of his mother's head, stood tall, and walked toward the cameras. His office smelled faintly of cedar and ink. Daniel closed the heavy office door with a soft click, not a slam. Control first, anger later. He sank into the leather chair, tapped the keyboard, and the monitors came alive in a wall of glowing eyes. Each camera, tucked into a quiet corner of the mansion, spilled its memory across his screens. He exhaled through his teeth, steadying his hands as he rewound the footage. A faint shift of fabric. A figure moving through the living room. His wife, Jennifer. Hair pulled back tight, silk blouse neatly tucked into tailored slacks. She walked like someone who believed she couldn't be touched. Daniel leaned in. His mother, Margaret, entered with a tray of tea. Her posture was polite, her small smile stretched thin, always trying to keep peace in the house. Jennifer's face hardened, lips moving fast, words sharp and invisible on the screen. Then came the sudden motion, her hand rising, shoving, striking. Margaret staggered against the couch, clutching her scarf. Daniel's knuckles dug into the desk until the wood let out a groan. His chest burned with something heavier than wealth or power. This wasn't business. This was blood. This was his mother. Behind the office door, voices stirred. The staff again, not knowing he could hear them through the vent. She doesn't deserve this. But the missus, she's dangerous. People vanish around her. Don't get involved. Daniel caught that last line. His head turned slightly, as if his eyes could burn through the wall. Disappear. The word echoed. That wasn't gossip. That was fear wearing its raw skin. He rewound. Slower this time. Every flicker of expression, every shift in posture. Jennifer's sneer. The flick of her wrist. The way she stepped forward, deliberate. This wasn't a moment of impulse. It was staged. Rehearsed. A performance she'd perfected. When Daniel finally stood, his body moved with deliberate calm. He adjusted his cufflink again, a tick now, a way to keep his hands from curling into fists. His steps out of the office were measured, each one striking the marble floor like a warning bell. Jennifer was at the dining table, scrolling on her phone, wine glass dangling in her other hand. She didn't flinch when he entered. In fact, she smirked, eyes lifting just enough to acknowledge him. "You're home early," she said, her tone clipped, careless. "I hope the trip wasn't a waste." Daniel didn't answer. Not yet. He studied her under the chandelier's glow, the sharp jawline, nails tapping the stem of the glass, the arrogance in her eyes disguised as confidence. For a split second, he remembered their first dinner. The laughter she wore like jewelry, the easy charm that had slipped into his life without resistance. But now he saw the edges. Too polished. Too rehearsed. When he finally spoke, his voice was steady, almost quiet. "Why is my mother crying?" Jennifer tilted her head, smirk tugging at her lips. "Because she's dramatic. She loves to play the victim. You know how older women get." The words rolled out too smooth, like she'd rehearsed them as well. Daniel's stomach knotted. She wasn't denying it. She wasn't even trying to hide. Her smirk widened. She needed discipline. Someone had to remind her she's not the queen in this house. The sentence rang in his skull like steel clashing. Still, he didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He simply nodded once, the way a man files away a transaction for later. He turned and walked out, not retreat, but calculation. In the hallway mirror, her smirk reflected back at him. But for a moment, it wavered, just slightly, like she sensed something shifting. By the time Daniel reached the stairwell, he knew the first act was over. He had the footage. He'd heard the whispers. He'd measured her pride. Now came the investigation. The truth. The things buried deeper than bruises or recorded blows. That night, he didn't sleep. He sat in his office, monitors flickering across his face, replaying the same clip until the silence pressed louder than any sound. Daniel's hand tapped the desk in a steady rhythm, each beat holding back the flood of rage pressing inside him. When dawn broke, he made the call. Not to friends. Not to lawyers. Straight to the detectives who had once dropped hints at a gala, that Jennifer's record wasn't as spotless as her smile. He didn't give them much. Just 3 words that carried all the weight they needed: "I have footage." Within hours, 2 plainclothes officers walked into the mansion, their shoes squeaking on marble floors that didn't belong to them. They spoke in low voices, sharp but respectful, like men who already suspected what they were about to confirm. Daniel stood with his hands behind his back, jaw locked, as he showed them the video. One officer's brow tightened. The other let out a breath, almost like relief. "We've been watching her for years," he murmured. "Different names. Different cities. 3 marriages. Always the same pattern." The words split Daniel open. He leaned against the edge of the desk, each syllable sinking into him. The officer went on. "Each time, she isolates the mother or father. Some cases of abuse. Some, disappearances. Disappearances." That word, whispered by the staff the night before, now carried the weight of a coffin lid. Daniel closed his eyes. Memories of Jennifer flashed, her too bright laughter at dinners, her quick pivots whenever questions about her past slipped too close. The threads all connected now, and he hated how long it had taken him to see the pattern. While the officers stepped out to make calls, Daniel wandered the mansion. Staff whispered again, not realizing how sound travels through marble. "He'll leave her, won't he? He's too smart not to. But rich men, they get blinded. Not Daniel. He's not like the others." Their quiet faith clung to him like armor. By evening, Jennifer came home from a spa appointment, robe tied loose, foam still clinging to her ear. She stopped short when she saw him waiting in the hall, officers at his back. For the first time, her smirk cracked, like glass dropped too softly to shatter. Her eyes darted, calculating exits, but Daniel blocked the airway with his frame, his silence heavier than any curse. When they read her rights, she laughed, shrill, unhinged, but the laugh cut off into a cough as the cuffs locked shut. The investigation moved quickly. Reporters dug through her past. 3 different last names. 3 elderly in-laws vanished. Restraining orders buried under settlements. Her life had been built on reinvention, each move timed before the truth could catch her. Daniel sat through every briefing, every midnight call with detectives. He didn't flinch when they showed him files with faces of missing elders. He didn't speak when they told him his tip had finally tied the threads together. His thoughts stayed on Margaret, sitting in her room, blanket pulled to her chin, whispering to herself that she wasn't cursed, that she wasn't a witch. For the first time, justice was moving. Not fast. Not loud. But steady, like Daniel himself. And when Jennifer's mugshot splashed across headlines, the mansion began to breathe again. Staff walked lighter. The lilies in the vase smelled like flowers once more, not medicine covering antiseptic. But Daniel knew this was never about headlines. This was about a mother who had finally been believed, and a son who had chosen to act when silence would have been easier. Weeks after Jennifer's arrest, the house felt different. No perfume hanging in the curtains. No pacing footsteps at night. No tension stretching between rooms. For the first time in years, the house belonged to Margaret again. Most mornings, Daniel found her in the garden, shawl wrapped around her shoulders, both hands cupped around tea. She looked smaller now, but lighter too, as if a heavy hook had been lifted from her chest. Still, sometimes she murmured that old question, "Am I a witch? Am I a bad mother?" The words clung like bruises that healed slower than skin. And every time, Daniel answered the same, kneeling by her chair, his voice steady and clear, "No, Mama. You're my foundation. You raised me into who I am. That's not weakness. That's strength." In town, the gossip had shifted. At cafes and barbershops, whispers spread like wildfire. "Did you hear? That billionaire's wife was living double lives." People nodded knowingly. Funny how the mother always sensed something was wrong. Folks should have listened. Say what you want about Daniel, but he protected his own. That deserves respect. Daniel caught pieces of it when he moved quietly through public places. He never corrected anyone. He let the talk wash over him like background noise. The only thing that mattered now was his mother's recovery, and making sure she never doubted herself again. The investigation kept pressing forward. Detectives linked Jennifer to 3 different aliases, 3 separate marriages, and 3 trails of abuse. For 2 missing in-laws, she became the prime suspect. The headlines called her the chameleon widow. The courts called her dangerous. Justice didn't come overnight, but it came steady. Each hearing brought new evidence, new testimonies from the past. And through it all, Daniel sat just behind his mother, not as the billionaire in suits, not as the business magnate known for his deals. He was simply a son, standing guard for the woman who had held his hand through every storm. By the time Jennifer was finally convicted, Margaret's bruises had faded. What hadn't faded was Daniel's resolve. He cut back his schedule, cancelled long weeks abroad. Money can wait, he told his board. Family can't. In the end, the mansion stood taller, not because of wealth, but because truth had been exposed, justice served, and love restored. And as the story closed, it carried weight like the last note of a song. Sometimes the deepest betrayals don't come from strangers, but from the ones closest to us. Daniel returned home to heartbreak, but chose action over silence. In doing so, he gave his mother back her peace and proved that real strength isn't measured in money, it's found in protection. Stories like Daniel's remind us that true power isn't wealth. It's standing up for the people we love. If this story moved you, don't leave just yet. Hit subscribe, share it with a friend, and stick around. We've got more powerful stories coming, ones that will stay with you long after the screen goes dark.